Emma had always loved visiting her best friend Rachel's house. It was warm, peaceful, and full of laughter. Rachel's family had become like a second home to her ever since high school. Even after college, they stayed close. During weekends or breaks, Emma would often drop by without even thinking. It felt that natural. Rachel's dad, Daniel, was kind and well-spoken. He was the quiet type, the kind who didn't say much but made people feel calm just by being there. He was in his early 50s, but he carried himself with strength and elegance. He was the kind of person who listened more than he spoke. And Emma respected that. At 26, Emma had just gone through a rough breakup. Her long-term boyfriend had left unexpectedly, and she found herself feeling lost. So when Rachel invited her to stay for a long weekend to relax and breathe real air again, Emma didn't think twice. A change of scenery sounded perfect. That Friday evening, Emma arrived at Rachel's family home, tucked away just outside Seattle. The house was surrounded by trees, and autumn had turned the leaves into warm golds and reds. Rachel greeted her with a hug and her usual energy, pulling her inside with stories already spilling out of her mouth. Inside, the air smelled like cinnamon and firewood. It was comforting, like childhood, but with more freedom. "Dad's upstairs in his studio," Rachel said, setting Emma's bag down. "He paints now." "Can you believe it?" Emma smiled. "Seriously?" "Yeah, it started as a hobby, but he's actually good. Go say hi. I'll start dinner." Emma nodded and headed up the narrow staircase. She remembered where the studio was. It used to be Rachel's old playroom. As she walked down the hall, she noticed the soft sound of music playing inside the studio. Something classical, calming. She gently pushed the door open. "Mr. Carter," she called softly. But when the door swung wider, she froze. Daniel was standing by the easel, shirtless, holding a brush, completely lost in thought as he painted. His back was to her, the window light casting long shadows across the room. There was nothing inappropriate, he was simply focused, unaware, but Emma suddenly felt like she had intruded on something private. He looked different. Not just like Rachel's dad, but like someone with depth. Someone carrying years of stories in his silence. Before she could back away, Daniel turned, startled. "Emma," he said, surprised, quickly reaching for his shirt. "I didn't hear you come in. I'm so sorry," Emma said quickly, looking away. "Rachel said you were up here. I didn't mean to walk in like that." He gave a small laugh, a little embarrassed, but not angry. "No harm done. I should have locked the door. Come in, it's been a while." Emma stepped inside carefully, still a little flustered. The room was filled with canvases, some finished, others half complete. Soft light spilled in from the windows, and the smell of paint hung in the air. "You're really doing this?" she asked, walking around a canvas that showed a misty landscape. "It keeps me sane," he said. "After Rachel's mom passed, I needed something that helped me feel grounded again." Emma nodded gently. She had forgotten how quietly he carried his grief. It had been a few years since his wife passed. She could still remember the quiet sadness in the house during that time. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Thank you," Daniel replied, then smiled. "I'm glad you're here. Rachel always lights up when you visit." Emma smiled too, the awkwardness fading. They talked for a few more minutes, mostly about art, music, and what Emma was doing now. For the first time in a while, she felt genuinely relaxed. That night, over dinner, everything felt familiar: laughter, stories, and the comfort of old friendships. But for Emma, something had shifted. She couldn't stop thinking about the studio, about the moment she walked in. Not because of what she saw, but how it made her feel. Daniel wasn't just Rachel's dad anymore. He was a person, layered, thoughtful, and unexpectedly creative. And for some reason, that thought stayed with her. The next morning, Rachel had to leave for a few hours to help a friend with a wedding event. Emma stayed behind, happy for a quiet morning. She poured coffee and wandered into the backyard with a blanket. She was surprised when Daniel joined her, carrying his own mug. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind through the trees. "You seem quieter than usual," he said gently. Emma smiled. I think I'm still adjusting to not rushing around. He nodded. You've been through a lot, haven't you? She looked at him. It shows. A little, he said, kind but honest. But there's strength in that too. Emma felt something tighten in her chest. She had heard a lot of sympathy lately, but not much understanding. Daniel's words felt real. They talked for almost an hour about heartbreak, healing, and finding purpose again. It wasn't flirtatious or inappropriate. It was human, grounded. But there was a connection, one neither of them could completely ignore. As Rachel returned later that day, Emma shook the feeling off. She was just emotional, vulnerable, grateful, maybe, for the kindness Daniel had shown her when she didn't expect it. But that night, as she lay in bed in the guest room, her mind wandered. Not toward her ex, not toward her broken plans, but toward the man in the studio, painting in the morning light. The morning after that quiet moment in the backyard, Emma woke earlier than usual. The house was still. She could hear birds outside and the low hum of the refrigerator downstairs. She pulled on a sweater and padded down to the kitchen, surprised to find Daniel already there. Pouring coffee? Couldn't sleep either. He asked with a small smile. Emma shook her head. Just woke up early, I guess. He handed her a mug and gestured toward the porch. The air was cool, the trees gently swaying. They sat down in silence again, like old friends who didn't need to fill every moment with words. After a few minutes, Daniel finally spoke. I never asked. Are you okay now? After everything that happened with your ex? Emma looked down at her cup. Some days, yes. Other days, not even close. That's fair, he replied. It was comforting, his way of not offering fake encouragement, but simply being present. Emma felt like she could breathe when she talked to him, and that surprised her. They started talking more after that. Not in any formal way, just small moments throughout the weekend. Sometimes in the kitchen while Rachel was out. Other times when Daniel showed her his paintings. Emma began to feel drawn to the quiet wisdom in him. He didn't try to fix her pain, he listened, asked questions, and shared little pieces of his own life. She learned that he had stopped working full-time after his wife passed and focused instead on rediscovering parts of himself he'd long buried: art, music, books he used to love. Emma found herself admiring that. Rachel, of course, didn't notice anything unusual. To her, it was just her best friend spending time with her dad, two adults getting along. And that's all it was. But inside, Emma was starting to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Comfort, curiosity, and a spark of something she didn't quite understand yet. On Sunday afternoon, Rachel went to visit a cousin who lived nearby. Emma stayed behind to rest. Daniel was out in the garden fixing something with the sprinklers. When he came inside, Emma was sitting on the floor in the living room, sorting through an old box of records. Wow, she said. You've kept all of these. Daniel smiled and sat down next to her, brushing dirt off his hands. Yeah, my wife and I used to collect them. Emma held up one of the covers. This is actually really cool, he laughed. You sound surprised. They started playing some of the records. Classic rock, a little jazz, even some old love songs. The room filled with music and easy laughter. It felt natural. To natural. At one point, a slow song came on, soft piano. Warm vocals, and Daniel looked at her. She used to love this one, he said, almost to himself. Emma looked over and saw something shift in his expression. Not sadness exactly, more like a soft ache. It made her heart tighten. You miss her every day, don't you? She asked. He nodded. I do, but it doesn't mean I can't feel something again. I didn't think I ever would. But lately, he stopped himself. Emma's breath caught in her throat. She didn't move. She didn't speak. Daniel looked at her gently, but with a seriousness that made time slow for a moment. I don't want to make things uncomfortable, he said quietly, but I felt a connection between us these past few days. Not something I planned, but it's there. Emma's hands felt cold against the coffee mug she was still holding. I felt it too, she admitted, barely above a whisper. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was honest. Two people realizing something unexpected but real was forming between them. Nothing had happened. No lines had been crossed. But emotions were surfacing, and neither of them could deny it anymore. Daniel stood up after a moment. "You're Rachel's best friend," he said, more to himself than her. "And I'm me. This is complicated." Emma stood too. "I know, but we haven't done anything wrong." He nodded slowly. "Still, we have to be careful. I don't want to hurt her." "I don't either," Emma said. They didn't hug. They didn't touch. But something passed between them, an understanding. They needed space to think, to decide what came next. If anything even could. That evening, when Rachel returned, everything went back to normal. Or it looked that way. But Emma knew something had changed. Later, while lying in bed, she stared at the ceiling, heart pounding. She didn't know what to call what she was feeling. It wasn't just attraction. It was a deep emotional pull, like someone finally saw her for who she really was and understood her. Was it crazy? Maybe, but it didn't feel wrong. The next morning, Emma packed her bag to return to the city. Rachel hugged her at the door, promising to plan another weekend soon. Daniel walked her to her car. For a moment, they stood in the driveway, the wind cool around them. "I'll give you space," he said quietly. "I know this is a lot." Emma looked up at him. "I just need time." "I think we both do." He nodded. "Take care of yourself." "You too," she said. And then she got in the car and drove off, heart full, mind spinning, and unsure of where any of this was going. But she knew one thing for sure. Nothing was the same anymore. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. The drive back to the city was quiet. Emma kept the music low, but her thoughts were loud. She replayed every moment from the weekend, the morning coffees, the soft conversations, the unexpected connection with Daniel. It had all felt so natural. To Natural Dot back in her apartment, life picked up again. Work emails, errands, friends asking how her weekend went. She kept things vague when Rachel texted her, said it was relaxing, peaceful, just what she needed. That wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. What do you say when you start seeing someone in a completely new light? Someone you weren't supposed to feel anything for? Emma didn't reach out to Daniel right away. She needed space to think. But space didn't help her forget. Instead, she found herself wondering about him. Not just what he was doing, but how he was feeling. Was he thinking about her too? One afternoon, about a week later, an email arrived. It was simple. "Hey Emma, I hope you're doing okay." No pressure to reply. Just wanted to say it was really good seeing you. "Take care, Daniel." She stared at it for a while before replying. "Hi, Daniel. I've been thinking about that weekend a lot. It really meant something to me too. Maybe too much. I don't know what this is, but I know I don't regret it." He responded a few hours later. "Neither do I, but I want to be careful." For Rachel. For you? They kept emailing for a few days. It was nothing romantic, not directly. They talked about art, music, their day-to-day lives. But between the lines, the emotional pull remained. Emma found herself smiling at his words, feeling a calm she hadn't felt in months. Then, unexpectedly, Rachel invited Emma back for a weekend. Just the two of them, she said. A girls' weekend at the house. Daniel would be around, but mostly doing his own thing. Emma hesitated. Part of her wanted to go. Part of her was afraid. But she said yes when she arrived. Everything looked the same. The trees, the porch, the familiar smell of cinnamon and coffee. Rachel hugged her at the door, already chatting about weekend plans. Daniel came out from the back hallway.com, as always, smiling softly when he saw her. "Emma, good to see you again." "You too," she said, heart racing. That evening, the three of them had dinner. It felt normal, comfortable, maybe too comfortable. Because Emma started to notice how easily her eyes found Daniel across the table. And every now and then, she caught him looking back. After dinner, Rachel went upstairs to call a friend. Emma wandered outside to the back porch, needing air. A few minutes later, Daniel stepped out quietly. I didn't expect you to say yes to coming back, he said. Emma looked out at the trees. I didn't either. But here I am. They stood there in silence for a moment. I've been trying to stay away from this feeling, he said carefully. Trying to convince myself it's just timing, emotions, something that'll pass. And has it? She asked. He shook his head. Not even close. Emma's breath caught. She looked at him, really looked, and saw it again. That quiet sadness, that depth, but also something new. Hope. I don't want to be reckless, he said. But I also don't want to pretend anymore. Neither do I, Emma said, voice barely a whisper. He stepped a little closer, then stopped himself. Let's not rush, he said gently. Let's take our time. Be honest. Keep this simple, whatever it is. Emma nodded. Okay. The moment passed like a quiet promise. Nothing happened physically, but everything changed emotionally. They knew now that something real was growing between them. It wasn't infatuation. It was something deeper. Over the weekend, Emma and Rachel spent time together. Movies, long walks, talking late into the night. But in small, quiet windows, Emma would cross paths with Daniel. A shared glance in the hallway. A short chat in the kitchen. These were not just casual exchanges. They were quiet acknowledgments of something that couldn't be ignored anymore. On Sunday morning, before Emma left, she found Daniel in the backyard, working in the garden. He looked up as she approached. I'll call you soon, she said, hands in her pockets. He smiled, brushing dirt off his gloves. I'll be waiting. Back in the city, Emma felt a strange mix of emotions, calm, curiosity, and something dangerously close to joy. She didn't know where this would go. She wasn't even sure if it could go anywhere. But it felt good. It felt real. And after everything she had been through, that was enough for now. Back in the city, Emma tried to go on with life as usual. But something had shifted inside her. The quiet connection she'd shared with Daniel wasn't going away. She found herself thinking about their conversations. It's the way he looked at her, like he truly saw her, not just as Rachel's friend, but as a person with her own struggles, dreams, and pain. A week passed. Then another. They exchanged a few short messages, thoughtful, warm, and careful. But something unspoken lived between the lines. They were waiting. For clarity, for space, for the right moment. One Friday evening, Emma sat in her apartment, watching the rain tap against her windows. Her phone buzzed. It was Daniel. I'll be in the city tomorrow. Visiting a gallery. No pressure, but if you'd like to join me, I'd like that. Emma stared at the message for a long time. It was simple. No expectations. But her heart said yes before her mind could catch up. She met him the next afternoon at a small art gallery tucked into a quiet street downtown. The moment she saw him, something inside her softened. He looked relaxed in a dark coat, hands in his pockets, smiling gently. Hey, she said, trying not to overthink everything. Hey, he replied. They walked through the gallery slowly, looking at the paintings. They didn't talk much at first. It wasn't awkward, it was peaceful. Like just being near each other was enough. Afterward, they stopped at a cafe nearby. Rain fell softly outside, and the cafe's warm light made the moment feel timeless. I've missed this, Daniel said, stirring his coffee. Emma nodded. Me too. He paused, watching her closely. I've been thinking a lot. About us. About what this could mean and how it affects everything. I know, she said. Me too. I don't want to hide, he said. But I also don't want to rush. I want to do this right if we do it at all. Emma looked at him, heart steady now. What would doing it right look like? Being honest, he said. With ourselves. With Rachel, eventually. Taking it one day at a time. She thought about it. It made sense. There was no need for drama or rushing. What they had was growing quietly, like a seed taking root. It needed patience, not pressure. I'm willing, she said. If you are? His eyes softened. I am, and just like that, something settled between them. A quiet understanding that they were starting something real. Not defined by labels yet, not shaped by fear, but guided by something deeper. Respect, care, and emotional truth. Over the next few weeks, they met a few more times. They went to bookstores, walked through parks, shared long conversations about life, loss, and starting over. Each moment felt easy, grounded, and meaningful. Emma began to see Daniel not just as Rachel's dad, or as the man she'd unexpectedly connected with, but as someone who had been through storms and still found beauty in the small things. Daniel, on the other hand, admired Emma's quiet strength. She didn't chase attention or try to impress. She listened, laughed at his dry humor, and offered comfort without judgment. Of course, there were complications. The biggest one being Rachel. One evening, after weeks of carefully navigating their growing connection, Daniel brought it up. "We can't keep this to ourselves forever," he said. As they walked along a quiet lake path, Emma nodded. "I've been thinking about her too. I don't want her to feel betrayed," he said. "But I also know we've done nothing wrong." "She'll be surprised," Emma said. "But I think if we're honest, she'll come around." They decided to wait just a little longer. Not to hide, but to make sure what they had was real and steady. They didn't want to go to Rachel with something half-formed or uncertain. Then one afternoon, Emma received a call. It was Rachel. "You've seemed different lately," Rachel said. "Happier. More at peace. Is something going on?" Emma felt a knot form in her chest. She knew this was the moment. "There is," Emma said quietly, "and I want to tell you about it. In person." They met at a coffee shop the next morning. Rachel listened carefully as Emma spoke. Not fast, not nervous, just honest. She told her how things had unfolded naturally, how it was unexpected, and how she had never planned it. At first, Rachel was silent, shocked. But she wasn't angry. She just looked at Emma wide-eyed. "My dad?" she asked softly. Emma nodded. "Yes, but I promise you it's not what you might think. We've been careful, respectful, we just connected." Rachel looked down at her coffee, then back at her. "You're the first person who's made him light up in years." Emma's heart skipped. Rachel sighed. "I don't know how to feel about it. It's weird, I won't lie. But if you're both happy, I won't stand in the way." Emma reached across the table and took her hand. "I care about you too much to ever hurt you." Rachel squeezed her hand. "Just don't make me call you Mom, okay?" They both laughed, and just like that, the air felt lighter. After that day, everything became easier. Emma and Daniel no longer had to tiptoe around what they were building. It still moved slowly, but with more confidence now. More freedom. There were still challenges, people judged, people questioned, but they held on to each other through it. Because at the heart of it all was something simple and pure, to people who found connection at an unexpected time and chose to honor it with honesty and care. Months later, Emma stood in Daniel's studio watching him finish a new painting. It was soft, full of light and quiet emotion. He looked at her and smiled. "You've changed my life, you know?" She smiled back. "You changed mine too." And as the morning sun poured through the window, they stood there not needing promises or declarations, just grateful to have found something real in a world that often moves too fast to notice.